As we speak, the IDF, the Israeli army, is planning meticulously the manner in which they will assault our people on the flotilla. The first step before doing this is to issue the smear campaigns that they have in typical, well-tried fashion. First, they slap the Hamas logo on your forehead, and then they shoot you. Sometimes they shoot you first and then slap the Hamas logo on you. But on this occasion, because they are, as I said, meticulous planners of their genocidal activities, they've done this in advance. There's a very long tradition. Go back many, many years since the first flotilla was attacked with people that were killed by Israeli commandos. Now, I want to believe that they will not kill our people now. But there's no doubt that they will abduct them. They will humiliate them. They will subject them to fear and terror in their cells. They've done this before. They will do it again. Who knows? Maybe this time they will go further. Maybe they will torture them physically. Maybe they will kill some of them. Look, it doesn't really matter. What matters is that the genocide is continuing. The flotilla, the very brave, courageous women and men on them, are acting as the conscience of humanity to break this blockade, symbolically to bring some food and medicine and baby formula, but that's only symbolic, in order to demonstrate that humanity is not going to accept the continuation of this massive war crime / genocide, and they're about to be attacked. So all of us, you, me, everyone, we have a duty to prepare public opinion, to create enough noise so the calculating propagandists who are measuring, they're trying to calculate the pros and cons, the benefits and losses of the Israeli propaganda machine, realize that they have more to lose by abusing our people and by assaulting them in the propaganda game than to gain. And this is up to us to make sure that the calculus in the head of these genocidal propagandists shifts in a direction where they will be coy about doing it. It's the only thing we can do to protect good men and women who are doing the business that we should all be engaged in, which is to end this genocide that stigmatizes our generation. It is significant because it shows that public opinion can make a difference. These governments are totally in the pocket of the apartheid state. They have aided and abetted Netanyahu from day one. They may not have liked him, but they aided and abetted him. They still aid and abet him. But, at some point they realized that they are bleeding public support. The Labour Party in Britain, the Australian Labour Party in Australia, Carney, the freshly appointed or elected Prime Minister in Canada, Macron in France, they are all scared of their own electorates because they can see that what happens is the ultra-right is effectively genocide washing itself by embracing Israel, trying to prove that, yes, they are fascists, but they are not anti-Semites. And the left is abandoning them. So the centrists are, they need to do something to demonstrate that they are not complicit in the genocide. But in the end, of course, we should see through this. Because if Keir Starmer wanted, if he really cared about the Palestinian state, the first thing he should try to do is to stop the genocide. Because if the genocide continues and is completed, there will be no Palestinian state. And the thing to do if you want to end the genocide is stop providing weapons and to stop providing military and intelligence support as the British Army is doing from its Akrotiri base in Cyprus. If he really wanted Keir Starmer to make a difference, he would have sent the Royal Navy to escort the flotilla so that the Israelis do not attack it. Those would be moves that would end the genocide tomorrow. If Western Europe and the United States and Canada and Australia embargoed Israel, if they stop providing them with F-35s and the accessories that are necessary to run them, and the bombs, and the intelligence support, then the genocide would end. Now, I've been part of political parties, I've led political parties that have advocated for the recognition of the Palestinian state. But I very much fear that our extreme center Zionist politicians like Keir Starmer are only recognizing the Palestinian state under duress, under pressure from the population, from voters, so that it never actually is instituted, it's never actually realized. We, those who are participating in the pro-Palestinian movement, in the peace movement, along with our Jewish comrades like David Adler, who want a genuine resolution so that from the river to the sea, we have equal political rights, above all else. We have been arguing for the recognition of the Palestinian state in order to create equal political rights, at least discursively, between Palestinians, Armenians, Jews, Muslims, whoever lives between the river and the sea. And we look askance at people like Macron and Keir Starmer, who are, Johnny-come-latelys. It's good that they are recognizing Palestine, but we are going to be pushing them and pressurizing them to take the steps like boycotting, divesting, and sanctioning Israel, which is the only thing that is going to change the course that Netanyahu designed 30 years ago for ending any possibility of a Palestinian state. Well, I think that Greece is a very good example of the veracity, of the truth in the slogan that we like to use wherever we are around the world, that unless Palestine is free, our nations cannot be free. You mentioned Spain and you mentioned Greece. Well, you will recall we had a Euro crisis 10, 15 years ago. And our countries in the periphery, including Greece, including Spain, were pushed very hard by the financial sector, by the United States, by the federal government in Berlin, effectively to surrender to permanent austerity and to turning our countries into colonies of the capitalist metropolis, right? Of Brussels, Frankfurt, Berlin, and Washington. Spain was not totally defeated. They were lucky to escape the fate of Greece. In the case of Greece, from 2010 and especially 2015, when I was in government very briefly, we put up a fight. And as a result of this unity in the left, within our own government, we were defeated and we were crushed. Michael, let me tell you this. I resigned the finance ministry at 6 o'clock in the morning on the 6th of July, 2015. 6 hours later, my prime minister, with whom we fell out and who succumbed to that blackmail, effectively surrendered, sent the foreign minister and the defense minister to Tel Aviv and signed a colonial-like agreement where effectively the Republic of Greece granted the Israeli defense forces and air forces essential sovereign rights over Greek airspace so that they can train their pilots. Since then, we have our governments, our quisling governments, allow me to put it in no uncertain terms, have effectively surrendered large chunks of Greek sovereignty beyond airspace and naval waters and so on, economic space, real estate and so on, to Israel. We've become a kind of, in the same way we were a colony of the United States as a result of NATO and of Germany as a result of the Eurozone and so on. The Israeli companies that Francesca Albanese's excellent report on the financial dimension and economic dimension of apartheid and of genocide in Israel, if you look at those companies that are mentioned in the United Nations Special Rapporteur's report, they are here in Greece. And now, let me give you a very simple example. Greece has a small military-industrial complex. Companies that made tanks, made anti-aircraft missiles and guns and so on. They all belong to Israeli companies now, all of them. They've been handed over. I was on the island of Kythnos during the summer on my boat with my wife and my dog, and I discovered that a third of the island has been purchased by Israeli real estate companies. So we have become a satellite. So you see, once you surrender and you are colonized by the powers that be internationally, whether this is the International Monetary Fund, the European Central Bank, and so on, then very soon after that, you find that, especially if you're in the Eastern Mediterranean, you start resembling the satellite of the apartheid state. The fact that we were bankrupt helped, because you can pick up assets very cheaply from bankrupt nations. Real estate was dirt cheap. If you come to Athens, you come to Tel Aviv, they look very similar weather-wise. I mean, if you're an Israeli entrepreneur and you want to hedge your bets, if you want a second home that looks very much like your own home in Tel Aviv, right? Athens is a very good place to be at. Moreover, and this is really very significant, the right-wing governments and establishment governments here in Greece, they always played the fear card, and fear coming from the side of Turkey. So the argument was, and I had this discussion with people on the left as well, people on the center left, people in the Syriza government, in which I was. And I remember having very serious disagreements with the person who happened to be, when I was finance minister, he was the foreign minister. And he was telling me that this alliance with Israel is very important. This guy was an old Marxist who used to be in the Communist Party. And I don't have much hair, but I was pulling it out. And I asked him to explain. He said, look, yeah, of course, Israel is awful. They are treating the Palestinians like vermin. They are carrying out gross violations of human rights and so on. But we have to deal with the Goliath next to us, which is Turkey. It's the great fear that, they will grab our islands, they will invade us, they will take us over. And, when you are a small bankrupt nation, you have to go into bed with the devil being Israel. So there was no defense of Israel as a democratic state and anything. No. It was just supposed realpolitik. But, Michael, this is all rubbish. Because it's not that Greece benefited from this strategic alliance with Israel in any way. We didn't benefit militarily in terms of our national security and defense, and we did not benefit financially. Let me justify this. First, militarily. Okay, we have a formal alliance with Israel. Israel is using Greek airspace because they don't have much airspace. They need a lot of airspace to train their pilots. All those sorties where they refuel aircraft and so on, they train over Greek airspace. So they got a lot out of this. What did we get? Nothing. If let's say, I don't fear that. I'm not part of the fear-mongering class here in Greece, but let's say that you believe that Turkey may tomorrow invade roads and take over roads. Yeah? Is there any chance that the Israeli military is going to move its little finger to help Greece? Zero chance. They will come to an immediate agreement and arrangement with Erdogan, because this is what they do. Turkey and Israel feign huge animosity, but then at some point they find a modus vivendi between them. There is no way that Greece is going to become, or that it has become, safer as a result of this strategic alliance with. No. So we lost nothing. We won nothing, and we lost a lot. What did we lose? We lost our capacity to impress upon the global majority, people in Africa, people in Indonesia, people in Malaysia, people in China, that we believe in international law. And if you are a small country and you lose your credibility as a defender of international law, and you cannot be a defender of international law if you are allied to Israel, a country that, a government, a regime, which loses not a single opportunity to destroy, to decimate international law. So we lost it. Now, financially, what did we gain out? They came and they took. And they took at cut down prices. Let me give you numbers so that you know what I'm talking about. They came here, not just Israelis, but Russians and Germans and Americans, hedge funds. They came and they bought, let's say, a mortgage of 100,000, let's say pounds, so that you think of it in British terms, of 100,000 pounds for 5,000. It was a distressed mortgage. People couldn't pay their money, their dues, their mortgage repayments. So it was sold at 5% of its value. But there is a house attached as collateral to this mortgage, right? Which it used to be worth 200,000 before the crisis. Now it's worth 80,000. So they buy a mortgage for 5,000, and then they evict the family and repossess the house, sell it off for 80. They've put in 5. They've gotten out 80. And that money they take to the Cayman Islands legally. Now, where is the benefit for Greek society on this? So we are neither safer as a result of the strategic link between Greece and Israel. We are not richer, we are poorer, and we have lost our reputation as a good global citizen, especially in the eyes of the global majority, of the global south. Oh, yes, an existentialist disaster, a catastrophe, a row that should never have taken place, and it should never have been projected into the public domain, that allows Keir Starmer reform, the new fascist movement that we can see with Tom Robinson filling the streets of London. It allows them to laugh at the left. And the worst part of it, Michael, is that what it does is it deflates the real hope that hundreds of thousands of people across the UK, but also beyond the UK, here where we are, because we're internationalists, we're leftists. We want to see the realization of this hope in Britain under your party, or whatever they might call it. So this is why Ken Loach and I wrote an article in The Guardian, effectively pointing the finger at all of them. We're not taking sides. We don't care who did what to whom, what grievances they have. And we said, this is not your party. It is the party of the masses. Get your act together. Your grievances, who was right, who was wrong, who was wronged, who was, who was stepping out of line, it doesn't matter. This is a historic opportunity since the Second World War for a mass movement that gives a parliamentary voice to a very large spectrum of British society, which since the days of Margaret Thatcher is aching for an opportunity to prove to the world, not just to the Britons, that there is an alternative, that the dictum of Tina by Margaret Thatcher, which is still hovering above our heads, was wrong. So my message, the message of thousands of people who are urging people like me, who happen to have a voice by some historical accident, to convey to the leadership, create the circumstances for a genuinely democratic conference to take place in November, so that the rank and file, so the people who join can have their voice and can be the ones who actually determine leadership structure, policies, everything. Just in other words, to be the opposite of what the Labour Party has been for decades now, which is a top-down party that has always used left-wing, progressive, ecologically minded people to knock on doors during general elections before betraying them the moment that they move into 10 Downing Street. Well, my position is a bit delicate because, as you know, I'm a very close friend of Jeremy Corbyn's, and I think the world of him. But before I name names or answer your question directly, I think it's high time that a new party, the one which is in the making, allows itself the time and the space to develop the dialogue amongst the people who want to join it, the dialogue that would yield the answer to your question. If you're asking me personally, I think we have this person. The person is Jeremy Corbyn. Is Jeremy enough? Of course he's not enough. Does Jeremy want to be, the leader that essentially shoulders the whole burden? No, he doesn't want to be that. He was thrust in a leadership position back in 2015, and he's being thrust now, ever since after 2019, with Keir Starmer's abandonment of the 2019 Labour Party manifesto. Because he was re-elected, thankfully, and some of us worked for that as well, in the last general election as an independent in Islington North. It was his responsibility to do it, and he has been doing it. But he's not enough. We need people like Zara Sultana. We need others. We need people that we haven't even imagined who they might be yet, in order to create this merger of different demographics and different generations. Because, my generation, I'm slightly younger than Jeremy, but I'm still an old fart. And, our generation has a duty to pave the ground for the next generation and to create the circumstances for the different generations and the different democratics and the different attitudes to come together to form this party And then for that party to find common ground with Zach Polanski's Greens in an alliance that will usher in a new way of doing politics in Britain.
Too true. Look, economies of scope have always existed. You had large corporations with huge economies of scope, not just scale, that did a lot of things at once, especially in the financial sector. And look at private equity and so on. That's not specific to cloud capital. What cloud capital does, it turbocharges this. Absolute turbocharges. And at such a level that it's not just a quantitative, but it is a qualitative increase. So take, for instance, you mentioned transportation, right? Well, what's Uber? What's Deliveroo? They are transportation companies that own no cars, no motorcycles, and no trucks. What they own is the algorithm, the cloud capital, which allows you to train the cloud capital to know you so that it captures you inside Uber, inside Deliveroo, both as a driver and as a consumer. And in the case of Deliveroo, also as a restaurant that sends food out, parcels. And in the end, you've got a situation where this cloud capital and the capacity to generate rents increasingly takes over from the actual standard economic activities. So let me give you an example. Uber increasingly makes its money not from exploiting taxi drivers and consumers, but from the data of consumers, from the data of riders on Uber, and the data from the drivers. Take Tesla. But increasingly, Chinese electric car manufacturers, more and more, a higher and higher percentage of their revenue now, in the case of Tesla, comes not from selling you a car or its spare parts, but it comes from the fact that as you're driving your Tesla and you're going to your mother-in-law or your father-in-law or your children or whoever, it knows whom you're visiting at what time, what music you've been listening to while you were visiting your mother-in-law as opposed to your daughter, which supermarket did you stop at to pick something up, what was that? All this information, which is highly correlated with who you are and what are your propensities to spend on X, Y, and Z, this information is then sold on. And Tesla makes a lot more money. So that's why Volkswagen is kaput, because Volkswagen doesn't have cloud capital. So cloud capital, for me, the reason why I keep insisting that it is an important concept, without which you can't really understand the manner in which the process that you described is unfolding. That's why. So going to your question about the political right and the political left, look, what is clear to me is that the center is gone. The center has not held. The center cannot hold. Thank you for the question. It's a brilliant one. What cloud capital does, it eliminates the liberal individual and poisons democracy. I'll start from the first. Liberals defended capitalism traditionally on the basis that, firstly, the market works beautifully, or as well as any mechanism that humanity can devise, to send signals to producers, to consumers, and so on. A signal emitting device which helps us coordinate, the invisible hand of Adam Smith. That was the first part of the liberal defense of capitalism. And the second part was that, okay, if you are a worker, a waged laborer, you sell your labor for 8 hours a day, but then the rest of your time is yours. It's your leisure time. You can do things with it. You can educate yourself. You can play. You can go to the theater. You can watch TV, whatever. Yeah, it's your time. So there's a time when you are in the marketplace, the labor market, when you are with your employer, and then it's yours. Then you are an autonomous sovereign agent, the liberal individual. Well, both those arguments about the invisible hand of the market and the liberal individual, well, cloud capital has wrecked both of them. Firstly, because there are no markets anymore. We have fiefdoms. So yes, there is rivalry between TikTok and Amazon and Instagram. There is rivalry, and TikTok did a lot of damage to Instagram. But that's not competition. Competition is when you say, you produce this mug, and I produce an equivalent mug, and we try to beat each other in the marketplace on the basis of price and quality and image, whatever. But here, you don't have competition. You have rivalry between two different fiefdoms. If you're stuck in Amazon and you do most of your business as a business person, you're selling in Amazon, right? And then to recalibrate all your marketing and go to TikTok is a very big switching thing. You cannot do it on the basis of today I'm going to buy this, tomorrow I'm going to buy another cup or mug, right? This is gone. So the market, it's not prices that determine what you do. The price mechanism has died. Now there are other things like the extent to which you are exploited. How much money is Google asking you to pay it in order to publicize your wares on the Google search engine, right? So that's not prices. That's different levels of exploitation, which if they exceed a certain level, then you go to another exploiter, another platform, another fiefdom. That's not the market as Friedrich von Hayek, for instance, imagined it being, or Adam Smith, a signal emitting device. As for the liberal individual, look, I was alerted to this quite a few years ago, Glenn, when I was still a professor at the university, by students of mine who used to come to me and seeking advice on what to do with themselves, their careers. They wanted reference letters and so on to find work or postgraduate programs and so on. And I noticed that they were very, very engulfed in an existentialist angst. Because you see, the moment you enter social media, I'm not against social media. I am into social media. This is not me being a purist saying, oh, it's terrible being social media. But what I'm doing is a realistic assessment of what it means, especially for a young person, to be in social media. And I watched this with my daughter and her friends and young people, students and so on. And I think this is a common experience. They know, these kids, that everything they tweet, all the posts they put on Snapchat, on Instagram, on TikTok and so on, they stay there. There's a record. And they know that when they seek a particular position with some company that they think highly of, that some AI bot is going to look at their history and come up with an idea, with a decision, are we going to interview these kids or not? So what does this mean? It means that, let's say it's 11 o'clock at night, you have a kid that is in bed and tweeting, they don't tweet, but they post and upload on Instagram and so on. They have this need to communicate with one another through this way, but at the back of their mind, they think, oh, you know what? I'm curating a personality that some employer is at some point, maybe in 5 years, maybe 10 years, maybe in 20 years, is going to look at. So suddenly they are taken over by the angst. Should I post this? Is this a kind of person that somebody will want to hire in 10 years? They may not think of this consciously, but subconsciously they know that. So essentially what I'm saying is they're not free. At that point, they're not expressing themselves. They're constantly curating a personality like a brand, which is for sale in 10 years from now. So that's the death of the liberal individual. If you add to that our newspapers, our television channels, our radio stations are all being taken over or being marginalized, pushed aside by Twitter, by, all the social media, which are now taking over news and current affairs and all that. And those are driven by cloud capital, which has been primed, optimized in terms of its coding to get us angry. Why? Because if we're angry, then we engage more with the screen. So the algorithm is not political, it doesn't give a damn. It simply acts on behalf of its owner. The cloud capital acts on behalf of its owner to get us more engaged. And it works out of its own. It doesn't even need to read Freud or Jung or whoever. The algorithm works out that if it makes us pissed off, really very seriously angry, then we are going to engage more and cloud capital will be replenished more readily. So it poisons our conversations. It keeps showing us things that make us angry, whether they are from our own ideological perspective, reinforcing our biases, or showing us what the enemy, the satanic people on the other side of politics show or tell or say. And that totally annuls any possibility of a conversation.